This program is presented by Hunter's Fund, formed in memory of Hunter Watson, a young entrepreneur who died at age 20 as a passenger in a distracted driving accident. Hunter's Fund seeks to support young people with promising ideas and to raise awareness of the dangers of distracted driving.
Today joining us is Kayla Simon, the aerospace engineer graduate from Syracuse University. She is an inspiring inventor who co-developed a wearable inhaler bracelet for asthma patients. Following graduation, Kayla has been working with aerospace startup companies. Kayla, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I don't think people really understand the fact that you're an aerospace graduate, you're working with these startup companies, and you also are an inventor. All of this is just mind-boggling. I read somewhere that you, whenever you were starting off, didn't know what it was you wanted to do with your life. And I think this is something that a lot of kids applying for Hunter's Fund or even watching struggle with. So what advice would you offer for someone to kind of pick their lane or figure out where it is that they want to spend the rest of their lives working in?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, like you said, I kind of went to school and I half thought I was going to do movies, and then I half thought I was going to do physics. And I remember then I was in like dual programs for a long time, but I try to be opportunistic in everything that I do. So even how I became an inventor, going through the Invented SU program, was because I saw an opportunity. I realized that like I'd never done something like this. I didn't have an internship. Like, what was I going to do that summer, and just took the opportunity. Because of that, it kind of created this entire life path for me. So I was able to do the Invented SU program. Then I went to the Blackstone Launchpad. Then I became like a CEO, right? And then from there, that's kind of the reason that I got the jobs that I got into. And yeah, that's just kind of how it started. So being opportunistic, making sure that you reach out and make connections, whether that's a professor whose research you're kind of into, or an upperclassman who, you want to know more about a certain course load, just making sure you can make those connections and continue to create opportunities for yourself, and recognizing when there are opportunities there that could totally change everything for you. Recently went through a job change. I used to work at a company called Virgin Orbit, and about 7 months ago, I switched to Relativity Space. And the reason that I made that switch was because I looked on LinkedIn at people who I admired and kind of like went through their past and said, all right, what do they do to get to where they're at now? And how can I be there? And that kind of facilitated some of the switch.
Man, I love that question. What did they do to get where they are now, and how can I get there? That is a fantastic question. Now I kind of want to bounce around a little bit. In-Spire, that is your bracelets for people with asthma. A, how do you come up with this idea? And then B, how do you facilitate something like this?
Yeah, it was hard. So I guess to answer your first question, so I did the Invented SU program in its inaugural year in 2017, maybe. And through that, the whole first week is dedicated to what it means to be an inventor. And it's not as hard as you think. Like when I thought of what being an inventor was, I thought like, people inventing the light switch and like Thomas Jefferson, I don't know, whoever is famous for being an inventor, and it being really hard and really difficult. But really, it's just recognizing painful or inconvenient things in your day-to-day life and then making a point to fix that, right? So in my case, our whole first week was dedicated to finding pain points in our lives. And my co-inventor, Elizabeth, she also graduated from Syracuse the same year. She had bad asthma, and I had really bad asthma as a kid. And that was just an issue that we thought we could tackle. Like, it's not too complicated. It really isn't, like when you think about the mechanics behind what this device is. And it's an issue that so many people recognize. Like, I think we used to say it was, the stat was 1 in 10 people have asthma, like a pretty chronic form of asthma. And I thought that was a really awesome opportunity. So that's kind of like how it was made, was being given the space as students to say, go nuts. Like, you can explore every avenue, and then we're going to give you direct feedback on that experience through like alumni, or at that time, the Cooper Union faculty. It was pretty awesome. And then every week we got to refine our idea through a pitch. So I would reach out to industrial designers about how to make it look more aesthetic and more user-friendly. I reached out to accountants because I had to do taxes for the first time. I had to reach out to like different mentors, and that's how I kind of found the Launchpad too.
You mentioned that you had mentors that helped you with this role. I know that you're really big and keen on mentorship. Why is that?
Yeah, I'm huge on mentorship, both in like my founding experience and still now in my professional experience. And I think that kind of goes back to like here's this person on LinkedIn. I want to do what they're doing. How do I get to be what they're doing? And sometimes it seems really unobtainable, right? Like in my industry, you meet people who are running rocket programs or are launch conductors for like things like the Falcon Heavy, which are just insane vehicles. And having mentors who have done things like that show you that it's really obtainable. And it kind of helps you like go through the process. So when I think about like giving back to Syracuse, oftentimes I mentor now like students at Syracuse, because I imagine it seems really unobtainable for a lot of those kids to see themselves in my job too. And like, I wasn't some magician. Like, I did school and tried my best and I ended up where I did. So I think that that's really important, like seeing representation from your background as well, like being a female in this space, in this industry, seeing women who I can look up to and say, if they're doing it, like, so can I.
I completely agree with that. It's so much easier to bounce ideas off someone who's gone where you've already wanted to
Exactly.
be. You touched on your job. How would you describe it?
So right now I work as a vehicle integration engineer at Relativity Space. Relativity Space is a pretty small startup. It's growing really quick, but right now we're at 300 people. And the whole thing is to launch a rocket using only 3D printed materials. So we have a pretty big factory that is constantly printing like very large structures. And my job is kind of to figure out how to manufacture that. I kind of say, like, this is a good metaphor. If different departments of a design team are pieces of a puzzle, my job is to put the puzzle together. So like, you know, I have to learn a little bit about fluids, a little bit about structures, a little bit about avionics, which is the electrical component, GNC, like all of these groups have to come together to make a full vehicle. And that's what my deliverable is the hardware behind the entire rocket. So yeah, I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing now and with such experienced people. And I think that's the craziest part is like my manager worked at SpaceX for 10 years and helped make some of the early developments in SpaceX history. And I have coworkers who like did the first launch of Blue Origin or worked at NASA or crazy programs. So that's pretty awesome.
It's definitely an incredible network, an incredible space that you're in. And I read somewhere that you actually met Richard Branson. I'd love to hear the story behind this.
Yeah, I love this story. So when I was in college, I was still in Syracuse. I had an internship with Virgin Orbit in 2018. I think like I went to work one day and it's super hot in Mojave, right? So like I wasn't wearing like makeup or anything, obviously. Like I didn't look great. I wore cargo shorts every day to work and like t-shirts because it was just so hot. And I came in and my boss goes, Kayla, Richard Branson's coming to the site today. You're going to give him a tour. And I had been there for 1 week. So I did not know anything at the test site at all. And like we all worked in trailers in like the middle of the desert. And like I didn't know how a rocket engine worked. And so he came on site, had his little like entourage, was very friendly, immediately like went inside and got like a straw hat. And then came out, I took him around. I said like, this is the engine, I'm pretty sure. We got a really cool picture in front of one of the engines. And then I think he like just went and kept going. George Whitesides, who was the old CEO of Virgin Galactic, was also there. So that was really cool. I think he was out there to go see Virgin Galactic and then like took a little pit stop to go see us, which was pretty cool.
I think my favorite part of that story is the fact you've been there for 1 week and they just kind of threw you under the bus. Like, here, why don't you go take the CEO and Richard Branson on a tour?
They're like, he loves interns, go. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I was like, I don't even know how I got this job.
So now you said you're working more with startups. Why did you decide to move to that side?
Yeah, so Virgin Orbit is a startup. It's just, there are kind of like key differences, right? And it kind of explains like why I made the switch. So Virgin Orbit now is at like 800 to 900 people, which is a lot more than what I was looking for. I was looking for somewhere where I could get a ton of responsibility. A lot of like pressure there too. Like I'm one who thrives under like a very high pressure environment. So I kind of like wanted that chaos. And so I started in Virgin Orbit. We were doing development work mostly. And then as I continued throughout my career, we got towards more of a production base, which is great for some people. But for me, like I want that crazy. I want that chaos. And so once I knew that my job would be a little more like standard, so like every day I came in, I did this specific thing, I would go home. I kind of decided like, you know, I think I want something more challenging for myself. I want somewhere where I feel like I can grow a ton really quickly. And so I started looking around at some really small space startups, and I found Relativity, and I really liked their mission. So their mission isn't to like build a rocket. Their mission is actually to 3D print infrastructure on Mars. So the idea is that we're really selling like the factory. The factory can make anything. The factory can make and launch a rocket. It can be put on one of SpaceX's like rockets and then build habitats on Mars. So that's something that I thought was just like the coolest project to be a part of one day. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I got here. It was like I wanted to be in a more like chaosy filled startup environment, kind of that emulated my In-Spire experience.
This space conversation is a fun one to have, especially with, you know, SpaceX and Mars and all the exploration. And you get to work on hands-on like projects that could be super significant to this exploration, to these adventures. What advice would you offer to someone who's watching this and maybe they're a 13, 14, 15-year-old version of yourself sitting there going, I can never do what she's doing. Even if it's not in this industry, but somewhere else, like what advice would you give to them?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I think if I could like say something to my younger self, it's just to like, again, keep being opportunistic and making those connections, but also just like keep tinkering. One of the questions like I kind of like guide my life a lot now, and not at that time, but it's just to ask why to everything. So like today, for instance, like I baked muffins and I put a cake dome on them, and I was like, man, why are they still like so fresh after like 3-4 days? Shouldn't they be like a little stale? Like, why is it not stale? And I feel like that's a really like powerful question to ask in any stage of your life. Like, you know, like how do rockets work? Why are they working this way? Why are we sending things to space? I think that really gives you a lot of insight into like how you deeply understand something. And not only does that tell you like where you want to go in it, but also gives you a lot of like basis when you're applying for jobs like this. Like people are going to ask you, I got to ask once, like, what are other rocket companies doing? And if you're like, why are there so many people in the market? You'll know like what all these companies are. So I think there's a lot of power in that. And, you know, even like in classes, right? Like I didn't do too well in my first 2 years of school until I started becoming an inventor and asking myself that why. And then I started doing like amazing my last 2 years of college, which was insane.
I think what you're kind of outlining is then that you got curious. Whenever you got curious, it was easier then for you to learn and to grow and expand. And I think that in itself is great advice for anyone listening, is just to get curious about something and just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Sometimes the YouTube rabbit hole is not that bad. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not.
So what hopes do you have for yourself in the future? What are some things you're wanting to work on, or some large vision goals you got for yourself?
Yeah, I feel like it changes all the time. And that's like something, you know, for other people to know too, is like just because, you know, I do the LinkedIn thing where I look for people doesn't mean that I'm also not like, where should I go in the next 5 years, right? It's kind of crazy to like talk to my peers, and none of us necessarily have like a super outline plan for ourselves. So like there's just a little note. But yeah, I think like some things I really want to hit are like, I want to become like a technical leader, right? So right now I'm an engineer at this company, but I want to be someone that people go to for like deeper technical understanding questions and make larger decisions on a systems level scale. So I want to go for like my master's degree, go back to school and get advanced education in like mechanical or systems engineering. So, you know, just a deeper academic understanding, being curious, getting that why for like more complicated things, which I think is really exciting.
You know, as we start to wrap things up, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, reach out to you for mentorship, just anything like that?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. So my name is just Kayla Simon. Yeah, always feel free to reach out. I'm super willing to take on like any questions that people come up with. So LinkedIn is probably the best place for that.
Awesome. And then our final question is, what has it meant to you to be a recipient of this grant and of this award?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I remember getting this. So I was the first Hunter Watson Scholar over at the Launchpad at Syracuse. And I just remember being like so excited that I got to be a part of something that just had so much meaning behind it. Like it's one thing to have like a student job right? But there's also another thing to work towards a goal that comes from such like inspiration, if that makes sense. It kind of allowed me to work at the launch pad, be a CEO, and like reflect on my own past. Like I had two people that I knew who died in a car accident when I was in high school. And so it was kind of a combination of all of those things that was like really inspiring and really meant a lot to me. And plus, like Jerry and everyone who runs this fund are just the most generous people. And they like still reach out to me all the time. And like it's just a community, I think, as well, of really amazing, like awesome entrepreneurs who all want to fuel each other to continue to be better. So I think it's a lot in like a little package, but it's a really awesome thing to be a part of.
Support from viewers like you make these grants possible. Support Hunters Fund.